Now, Ireland is considering a radical new plan to help drug users, which could see supervised injection rooms introduced to give addicts somewhere safe to get a fix. It's also considering moves to decriminalise drugs like heroin and cocaine for personal use. Well, let's head to Runcorn. We can talk to former drug user Shaun Attwood, who now campaigns to dissuade others from using drugs. Morning to you, Shaun. Can I ask about injection rooms first and foremost? Would that be a sensible idea, to give some people somewhere safe to take drugs?
Well, I work in drugs education. I warn young people about the dangers of drugs, but I'm also an advocate for a sensible drug policy. And if you have injection rooms, then the health factor is paramount because the diseases aren't being spread. We've got clean needles, and it's a benefit to society.
The argument would be from some that you're creating a sympathetic atmosphere and a sympathetic place for people to come and do something which is, in effect, illegal.
Yes, and the police have warned previously, where this was about to happen, that crime would go off the scale and people would be taking heroin willy-nilly. And actually, the reverse has happened. The places around the world that are the most prohibitive against drugs have actually got the worst drug problems.
What about the whole decriminalisation issue, which is also being addressed by Ireland in all of this? I mean, they're taking on a lot here, but looking at very serious drugs like heroin and cocaine, or obviously that's more of a social drug in some respects. Again, that's going to upset a lot of people. We know that there is a lot of opposition to moves like this.
Well, the war on drugs is mostly a war on marijuana users. That's the bulk of the arrests. And the police were started by Robert Peel out of London to stop people from hurting each other. But what's happened since drug laws came about, prisons have become warehouses for young people, for people with addiction issues, and for non-violent drug offenders. 1 in 100 adults is in America right now in prison, and hundreds of thousands of women which never used to go to prison, all because of non-violent drug offences. We want to follow that model? I don't think so. It's a massive disaster for the taxpayers.
You were in prison, Shaun, weren't you, as a result of your previous life. What is the situation like in prison when it comes to drugs?
90% of the guys I was housed with were shooting up heroin and crystal meth. 2/3 of them had hepatitis C from sharing dirty needles. And in the UK, it costs over £50,000 a year to house a prisoner, more than sending them to the top private schools in the country. And when you fill the prison with these non-violent drug offenders, that adds up to hundreds of millions for the taxpayers.
OK, that raises the issue then, and the question of how prisons are managed and how these drugs are getting in, which is a very big issue. But if you decriminalise, doesn't that sanction drug use rather than discourage it?
Well, that's what the police have said in all the areas of the world, such as Portugal, where it was about to be decriminalised. But the reverse has actually happened. Once you take the buzz out of taking drugs, the illegality out of it, young people actually turn away from it.
You go into schools and talk to young people, and look, I mean, it's a great thing to do because of your experience. You know it better than most of us. What is your key message? How do you persuade young people that this is not the path to go down?
Well, I go in and I don't preach at them, and I just say, here's what happened to me. I went down that road of drug use, started out fun at first, but the fun goes down and the pain increases, and you just can't stop taking the drugs because you're so addicted. And I show that my parents, my mum had a nervous breakdown. I served almost 6 years in one of the most violent jails in America where people were getting murdered around me, and so on, and give them all of the consequences of taking drugs, and then they can think for themselves. And I get all kinds of feedback from the students afterwards saying we don't listen to our parents, we don't listen to our teachers, but you came in here and we put 2 and 2 together and we can see the horror of what drug use leads to.
Shaun, appreciate your time and your views on that this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks for having me on.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's always a difficult issue, talking about drugs, but it's always interesting to get the perspective of someone who has been at the sharp end of it. So thanks to Shaun for that. Your thoughts, if you would, at Sky Steve.